Canelo Alvarez and Gennadiy Golovkin may face each other inside the ring as part of a trilogy fight soon. The two-fight deal that's almost finalized will involve multiple matches between Alvarez and some other big names in boxing. Watch on for all the details on the to-be deal. So, what will the two-fight deal entail for Canelo Alvarez and other fighters? Canelo Alvarez and Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing are about to strike a major deal, which will be worth over $85 million for boxing superstar to compete on DAZN. So what will the deal entail? The first fight, as per the deal, would put Alvarez against the reigning light heavyweight champion Dmitry Bivol. The first fight is to take place on 7th May if the deal is indeed signed. Then, should Alvarez win, he'll be facing Gennadiy Golovkin in a much-anticipated grudge fight. This second fight will take place on 17th September this year. And before Golovkin can go up against Alvarez, he'll have to face Ryota Murata in a rescheduled 160-pound title reunification in Tokyo this spring. He'll have to win the fight to keep the Alvarez fight intact, reminding you that the deal hasn't been signed yet. However, according to sources that reported to ESPN, the negotiations are in their final stages. What importance does the deal hold for Alvarez? Apparently, the two-fight offer had been pitched to Alvarez weeks ago. He took his time mulling over the consequences and importance of signing the deal. However, this isn't the only offer made to him in recent days, and he was recently contacted by Al Haymon's PCB with regards to a one-fight deal. That offer entailed defending his 4 middleweight championship belts against Jermall Charlo in May this year. The offer is worth more than $45 million and apparently still stands. The #1 pound-for-pound boxer signed a one-fight deal with PCB last year as well. The 11th round TKO of Caleb Plant earned Alvarez upwards of $40 million guaranteed, whereas Alvarez's previous 3 fights have been promoted by Eddie Hearn, including his title victories against Callum Smith and Billy Joe Saunders. Prior to the current DAZN deal, the 31-year-old signed a whopping $365 million deal with the network in 2018. This was shortly after Alvarez had first defeated GGG in an HBO headlining pay-per-view match. But after only 3 fights, Alvarez sued his promoter, Oscar De La Hoya's Golden Boy Promotions. The suit was settled, and Alvarez was granted freedom. If the DAZN deal is finalized, then the fight against Bivol would mark Alvarez's second in chasing a title in 175 pounds. But possibly the biggest prize of this deal, if it comes through, would be that third shot at a GGG match, not to mention the financial aspect of it all. The to-be Hall of Famers went at each other in a match that ended in a tie in 2017. That bout produced more than 1 million pay-per-view purchases and more than 20 million in gate receipts, not to mention how Golovkin himself has been insistent on fighting Alvarez. The 31-year-old Russian is a tricky boxer, skilled in the art of controlling, and has an excellent jab as well, but he hasn't been able to entertain much recently, especially the past year where his 2 wins were quite underwhelming. In other news, Tyson Fury may fight Alexander Usyk this year. A couple of fights that are scattered over the next few weeks, and the schedule beyond March filling up quickly, boxing is back in action after a brief lull. In March, we'll get the Jermall Charlo vs. Brian Castano face-off for the undisputed junior middleweight championship. But other than that, we have some of the biggest names in the sport lined up for the near future too. Tyson Fury is all set to face Dillian Whyte, while Alexander Usyk will be giving Anthony Joshua his mandatory rematch. But what will come after that is the real question. After negotiations for a championship unification in the heavyweight division weren't able to come together, many other deals in recent boxing history also fell apart in sort of a pattern. However, if both Fury and Usyk are able to defeat their respective opponents, it's still possible that the two will be able to sign a deal. Not to mention how several potential sponsors are looking out for such an opportunity. Last year, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia was all ready to let out a whopping $155 million to secure a Fury vs. Joshua face-off. On the other hand, things are less hopeful for Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr., and the long-awaited unification bout might take even more time than initially expected. But will there be a welterweight champion this year? Errol Spence Jr. and Yordenis Ugas will meet this year in order to unify 3 147-pound belts. The boxer that wins will then take on the winner of a bout between Radza Budayev and Imantas Staniansis, which is on the same undercard as Spence and Ugas. Staniansis, who's the WBA mandatory challenger, stepped to the side to let Ugas have a fight with Spence. If the winner from the Ugas-Spence fight decides to unify their 4 belts, then Terrence Crawford, Budayev, or Staniansis will have to give the blessing once more. Even when there's a mandatory challenger blocking the way, the building blocks for a face-off between Crawford and Spence are still in place. Spence has recovered from a surgery that repaired his detached retina, and Crawford no longer calls Top Rank his promoter. Bob Arum and Al Heyman rarely ever conduct business with one another at this point, which had been a major obstruction to a Spencer-Crawford fight over the years. However, it's still much more likely that we won't be crowning anyone the new welterweight champion, and the title would remain undisputed in 2022. This is, of course, regardless of whoever wins the Spence-Ugas fight, because if Spence emerges victorious, it's very likely that he'd move to 154 pounds very quickly. Will Josh Taylor make more than one defense of his title? Following his efforts to unify the junior welterweight division the previous year and making history in the process, Josh Taylor is likely to quit the division altogether. This stands as long as Taylor is able to make his first defense successful against Jack Catterall in front of the latter's home fans in Scotland towards the end of February. As per Taylor, his current division doesn't have much to offer in terms of opposition, challenges, and big money fights. He became the champion last year after defeating Jose Ramirez by unanimous decision. The division's best two boxers came against one another that night, and Taylor performed exceptionally well. Taylor says his future lies in the welterweight decision, and not the junior welterweight one that he currently competes in. He recognizes his potential to fight stronger opponents and will use it to earn big in the future. At 31, Taylor wants to go all in and cash in all his talent and potential, but he fears that the current legal situation between Terrence Crawford and his ex-promoting network Top Rank could cause problems and act as a hindrance. Next, Ryan Garcia has broken away from Team Canelo in pursuit of independence. Ryan Garcia gave a surprise to the boxing world recently when he announced that he'll be ending his 3.5-year-long undefeated 5-fight run training under Eddie Rosnesos and Canelo Alvarez. He has instead chosen to remain near San Diego and receive training under the respectable Joe Goosen. The California-born junior is currently reigning 5-0 and fought his first 5 official bouts under Eddie Reynoso's tutelage. The 23-year-old is planning to face Emmanuel Tego in April next. His father and co-trainer spoke out about Garcia's decision in an interview recently. About the sudden switch of trainers, Henry Garcia said that Ryan decided to have his own gym, free to choose his schedule and days. He wants his own unique brand and wants to work on expanding it as much as possible. He went on to compare Ryan's decision as when someone wants to finally own their own house after living on rent for many years. He said that the junior boxer didn't want to feel like he was under someone and wanted a taste of freedom. Garcia thinks that he can make a brand for himself just like the many great names of the industry, such as Floyd Mayweather. He doesn't want to feel confined any longer and consider other people's input in everything that he does and goes on to do in his career. He also said, Ryan is becoming a strong man and making his own decisions. That's the bottom line, and we have to respect that. He's not a kid anymore. He wants to make his own decisions, and it's not a bad decision. We're still in contact with everybody at Team Canelo. That was it for today's video. What are your thoughts on a 2-fight deal involving Canelo Alvarez and GGG? Let us know in the comments below. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel where we post similar videos quite frequently. We'll be seeing you in the next one.